Hello, Steve. Hey, that's a coincidence. Here. And I'm gonna do like a comparison between all the tech figures, 4 of which were like really, really bad. 2 of which I don't know their names, can't remember them. But those 2 are really, the 2 that I don't remember their names of are the 2 worst ones. Let's start in the 50s, when it's around the time that 3 of them were born. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and Tim Cook. Well, I think Tim Cook's younger, a bit younger. Steve Jobs was born probably with special needs, given what I can infer, even though I'm not that good at inferences. And Bill Gates and Tim Cook were just normals. They didn't have disabilities. And then Steve Jobs had a rough childhood, being poor and also having mental problems. I don't want to talk about it because all those videos I see about him are sad. Even though I think that he deserves it due to the way he tried and succeeded in ruining the computer industry. But Bill Gates was part of a rich family, had advantages going to a private school for both high school and college, went to Harvard, the number 1 prestigious school in the country. Now, I know both Steve Jobs and Bill Gates dropped out. Now, Tim Cook was a really nice person in his childhood, but once he got into his 40s, things started to change, but that's way too far away. Anyway, they shared a deep interest in computers, but Bill Gates was doing it on the positive side, and Steve Jobs was doing it on a heavily negative side. Steve Jobs is into hardware. Bill Gates is into software. Also, Bill Gates was born as William, but many Williams go as Bill, much like how I do an even more strange alias scene, and I don't think even William Bill is considered an alias. But aside from the point, Bill Gates, that's what I'm going to call him, it's easier, and more people will know him as that, eventually became the richest man in the world. I don't know what that other video said. I think it said 1995. Yeah, 1995, now I remember. Around the same time, Steve Jobs wasn't doing too well, but let's start with Apple Computer. Founded in 1976, incorporated 1977. It sold successful computers because they were not designed by Steve Jobs, they were designed by Wozniak. But then other computers like the Apple III, the original Macintosh, the Macintosh 2C, the Apple IIc, were basically failures because they're designed by Steve Jobs. Not so much the Apple III. The Apple III was a great computer, it's just sort of like has some Steve Jobs in it. Whereas Bill Gates was into software and did MS-DOS, DOS in general, and the first Windows, and that's where wars broke out between them and they stopped becoming friends. Their friendship ended at that time because of the software part that Steve Jobs got into. That actually is pretty nice. He's pretty good at software. He's just terrible at hardware. And then fights broke out when Windows 1 was launched. And this type of Windows was a good type of Windows, unlike Windows 8, 8.1, 10, 11. I'm going to tell you why that fall of Windows happened, even though Bill Gates was a good person. Never became bad. So, the original Macintosh was a failure. Well, a successful failure, because it helped when Steve Jobs left Apple, got ousted. It became a success, but it started out as a failure because of how the closed system was. And I'll tell you why Tim Cook is an even bigger criminal with the closed system later on. But then Apple started to, well, everybody says that Apple, after Steve Jobs got ousted because of a violent outrage in corporate terms, people say Apple was declining in success, whereas their computers were great in quality. They just, after the 1990s hit, their marketing went down the tubes in a racist manner that discriminated against American consumers. Like, all these Wikipedia pages say, iMac predecessors, only available in Asia and Europe. Most of the models, 90% of the models like that. And the others say, only available in the North American educational markets. Yeah, what the fuck is that all about? Steve Jobs actually fixed that when he came back to Apple, but that was the only thing he fixed. Now, Windows was becoming a big success, and so was Wintel. The combination of PCs and Windows, because Windows wasn't like Windows 10 or 11 these days. And back then it was great. So, it started like a outrage in the market because it was occupying so much of the market space, which I never planned to do. I just plan on like providing another option for my computer company, which I'll discuss at the end, if I can remember. I think I will. Got it. So, as Apple was in decline mainly because of its racist marketing team, not because of its great products with great support that outdo Apple's support by tons of times more in quality than today's Apple computers. Any computers after Steve Jobs came back, other than the early ones before he was an interim CEO, before he became actual CEO. Anyway, the rivalry was over once, I think, between the two. But a new rivalry started up with Michael Dell. And Steve Jobs hired Tim Cook. But this is where things with Tim Cook's mind start to go crazy. It becomes like this diseased after Steve Jobs influenced him. And Steve Jobs is actually much better than Tim Cook. Tons better. Because Tim Cook was a much bigger evil than Steve Jobs after they met. And he was hired to Apple. Now, Apple's computers plunged in quality, but rose in marketing strategy and availability. They opened the Apple Store. That was a success. Up until, like, Tim Cook started taking over because of Steve Jobs' death. I'll get to that later. Anyway, Bill Gates also continued to succeed with the partnerships with Apple, the software. Oh yeah, Windows XP, I love that. Windows 7, I think that was afterwards, but it was the last good operating system of Windows because... And guess what? I had no problems with Vista. I never had a problem with Windows Vista. Why is everybody saying they had a problem with Windows Vista? I can understand Windows Me, Mistake Edition, because I don't know what that operating system is like. But Windows Vista was just fine. Stop criticizing it. Anyway, Bill Gates left Microsoft, and then the CEO took over and was an even bigger evil than Tim Cook was, because of it was not that bad with Windows 8. It was great with Windows 7. It wasn't that bad with Windows 8. Not that bad with Windows 8.1. But Windows 10 starts the dark age of Windows, where, you guessed it, forced automatic updates that can wreak havoc on your computer. I'm not going to go too much into it because I don't want to sound crazy with made-up future things that could happen, but let me name a few. Hard drive storage wiped. Some parts of the hard drive, or maybe the whole hard drive wiped. Microsoft getting into lawsuits because of that. Malware being loaded onto the computer in each update, not prevented like Microsoft says. Tons more bad things happened with the spiral of Windows 10, and then the worst thing about it is that people actually liked it. They got tricked into thinking that automatic updates were a good thing because of those lies that Microsoft said. And they believed because they were telling the truth about Windows 7, but now that the new CEO is trusted out of telling the truth of Windows 7, he can be trusted with the lies about Windows 10, about Windows 11. Windows 11 almost always would wipe the hard drive in an update. Can't stand these arrogant people that remind me of the people Pine Power Ally describes. You probably don't know who he is. He's a great person who is in my area. Far better than any of these people. And yet he's hated. But back to the point. Windows was on a downward spiral. It's like a disaster now. Because it's like basically unusable for those who have caught up and realized that what Microsoft is saying is all a lie. Google, on the other hand, is even worse. The CEO is like obsessed with like making revenue off of ads on every platform he owns, committing federal FCC crimes on the platforms like YouTube that are owned by it. The 3-strike system that just got implemented with anti-ad blockers, that's like the biggest FCC crime ever committed. The biggest violation. And people actually do think these ads is a bad thing, unlike Microsoft Windows updates. So, there you have it. Google, the CEO is like the worst one of the 5. Bill Gates was a great person. He was one of the best. Whereas Steve Jobs actually ranks on the top half after Bill Gates. Then Tim Cook is in the middle, surprisingly. Then Microsoft and Google. Just screw yourselves. You're no good. Lastly, I want to say, I'm sorry if I'm doing an ad in this video, but my computers by Quadrillion are going to be great because they use the old Windows that is unsupported, cannot be accessed by Microsoft and their corrupt people. That being Windows 7, Windows Vista, Windows XP, and even Windows 2000. Those will be the operating systems used. In the future, other operating systems based off of both Linux and Windows will make a great operating system that's sort of like Pear OS on iCarly and Victorious. Like that. In between Mac and PC, so that everybody can use it comfortably. But these computers are much better. They're open system, which is something that... Oh, I forgot to mention, Tim Cook is also committing like the crime of like trying to ruin the whole computer industry, dragging the closed system with him into other companies. And that's actually going to result in like tons of landfill piled up by 2050. Probably like 3 miles up, covering the entire surface of the Earth, given how exponentially the replacements of the computers are going to be. That's all I have to say. Bye.